So, next year, 50th anniversary of Star Trek. These guys have the worldwide rights. And you have a game coming. Funny enough.
We do indeed.
Okay, tell us about this epic Star Trek game you've got on the way.
Star Trek's had 50 years of games and computer games and all kinds of things, but what it's never had is that race spanning expansion. It's the whole galaxy that you're going into, and that's what we're making. You're going to be playing the Romulans, the Klingons, the Federation, the Ferengi, the Andorians, the Cardassians, taking your empire from its starting planet.
So many.
And heading off into space to encounter new worlds, dominate, trade, be diplomatic, depending on your character, to see which one of you can raise above it all and claim ascendance.
So, from looking at it, the impression I get is that we each play a race, okay? We have our kind of starting planet, and then we're exploring. And then at some point, we're going to start crossing paths.
Yes.
And that's when things like diplomacy and war potentially come into play. Is there a limit to the number of players that could potentially get involved in this? And is there a limit to the potential size of the game? Because it strikes me that you could do this on a big scale.
No, you absolutely could. In fact, that's part of each of the nations has been set as a set of pieces. So 10 planets, some connecting space lanes. You'll start off with ships and fleet management ships and your main card, plus a events deck and a tech deck specific to your race. But if effectively you can play 6, 7, as many races as you have, you can play, and the bigger the surface you play on, because it is that until you bump into each other, you and I, we could have a isolationist game. You're at one end of an 8-foot table, I'm at the other. We're going to take our time before we bump into each other. Or we could play on this table and have a fight straight away.
I don't think I've ever seen a board game that does that style of...
I can't think of one that does that.
There are lots of expansionist games like that, but none where the table layout actually dictates how far you...
It's one of the key pieces of the puzzle when Sean Swaggart and Aaron, the principal designers at Gale Force 9, when you're thinking about new games and new ideas, you want to try and bolt a game idea to a mechanic and to a piece of IP that fits. And this fluid space where planets go down, distances between planets, you're playing in 3D. And then there's the 4D element of trying to, well, when we encounter each other, what happens? Well, you've opened up space lanes, you've opened up diplomacy, you've bumped into the Klingons. And the Klingons are, hey, we're nice and friendly, here's our fleet, we'd like that planet, please. Mm-hmm. And you're there going, well, we were thinking about being cultural.
Yeah.
And the Ferengi are there stealing things off anybody that will allow them. So yeah.
So if we did play the big game, obviously as we're exploring, we're also increasing the richness of our assets and things like that. So when we do meet, if we do decide to go to war, it could be quite sizable, yeah?
It could, but the game's about a balance between 3 things. You've got production, you've got culture, and you've got tech. So when you find new planets, depending on the planet or the location, it allows you to expand and explore the planet with those things. Those 3 currencies in the game then allow you to expand your tech tree and have better warp, have cloaking device, have better photon torpedoes, but they also allow you to build libraries and opera houses and cultural stuff. So the game's not about force or culture or trading, it's a combination of the 3. Yeah. So it's not that the Klingons have to play aggressive and shoot everything. Yeah. They are better at it. But because the planets are random as you encounter them, if they keep coming across, oh, it's another cultural planet, oh, it's another cultural planet, they need planets with red for production and build ships and build fleets if they want to go that route. And other races like the Ferengi are just trying to take advantage of everybody, and you're trying to be nice to them, but also shoo them away like an irritating, like a Ferengi.
So what's the victory condition at the end of it then? What?
It's a tracker for culture. You are trying to reach a level of cultural ascendancy. and your cultural tracker is raised by developing planets or building space stations. So you in your set, a race will include 40 ships, little ships that will fly around, and 3 space stations. And so a combination of planets and markers on planets to represent culture, and the space station will show your tracking. But cultural ascendancy is not about just building opera houses, it's about whatever it suits. So the Klingons,
planet,
the Klingons get some bonuses with, did you make another attack fleet? The Romulans, did you move your tech tree? The Ferengi, have you got multiple trade relations with multiple races? And so some races are absolutely about the quicker you meet other people, the better. Some will need a bit of time to build, but because you've all got that random bit of, well, I don't know what the first planet, what did the Federation bump into? Oh, it's a black hole. It's a great planet where everybody's friendly. It's a planet full of psychopathic cannibals, but because the universe is there, as the game progresses, a turn is represented by a decade of time. It really is a culture growing. So you're not trying to measure things in, oh, it's a week, it's 2 weeks. It's we found a planet, and in this turn, we've developed it. We've built some things. I've built a fleet. I've sent a science fleet off to explore. I've sent a war fleet off to kick someone else's planet in the arse. But yeah.
So in terms then of the components, because you'd mentioned the 40 ships, that's 40 ships per race,
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of assets. So you have like 40 ships. You have also fleet tokens to represent groups of ships.
Fleet cards and fleet tokens. So anything over 2 ships, 3 ships or more, is represented by a fleet. And fleet cards vary in the task you set them. So they could be a science fleet that has 6 ships on it that evolves a planet faster or builds cultural things, or you could have war fleets. The Klingons can have a 10-ship fleet, which is basically flying around looking for a fight. It's a bunch of Irish on a Saturday night looking for a fight. So your fleets, your fleet management, you have your main card, which has got a wonderful little.
When I saw those,
making
the noises.
Yeah, no. The counter, the whole thing about having counters or actually having little. That was a great idea. Plus your ships, but then each race, the equivalent, comes with a whole bunch of traveling lanes and 10 planets. So as you add players, you're adding more planets, more variety, but there's no limit to how big the game can be. It's literally how long do you want to play, how far apart. So
it's the scalability of this game is just blowing my mind, because I'm looking forward to playing small games of it, often. But I can't help but think if you could get your gaming group together on a big table and you're all starting out, and then gradually you start bumping into one another and doing the trades and the diplomacy and stuff like that, it's going to be fascinating.
It makes me think about how good this would be at conventions. This would be an amazing game.
One of the hardest things about picking properties that we really have a passion for is, of course, you're already carried away before you start. And whether it's Star Trek or Doctor, we haven't picked anything we didn't really like. And it's great. And at the same time, you go, so we've got 18 ideas and we're trying to fit them all in one game. The part of this of treating a race as a playable piece means that the starting game that will have 3, Klingons, Romulans, and the Federation in it, allows us then to add races as we go, but also let people have an experience of just the races, and then we'll add the Borg as an enemy for everybody to deal with, or the Dominion as a part of the storyline that's changed, as opposed to, I'm not going to play the Dominion as a player or the Borg because they don't quite fit, but playing Andorians, playing Ferengi, and being able to have all of that scope means that, it really is limitless.
And again, I tend to ask this in the interviews, but clearly you have a roadmap for this game of where it's going to go next. There is ongoing support because it's become built in to board games now. Good board games don't just start and finish with the one game. There's the ongoing support to keep us engaged, to keep adding more and more layers of fun and change things up.
Properties, particularly the big hobby properties, and there's a distinction now in the market between, I think, board games of the old school. When you say to someone who's not a gamer and you say board game, they think Monopoly, they think Game of Life, and hobby board games, which a hobby board game's got involvement, it's got interaction, and you play it like a miniature game. You invest in it. It's not just, I play it when it's a rainy day. And with properties like Star Trek, you've just got so much to explore. It's crazy to say, I'm going to limit myself to everything in one box when, you know, one box, why? And with all the ships and all the things that we wanted to get in, you just keep making a list and you go, oh, okay, there's the first 3 years of product and we didn't have to think about anything else. The beauty is that when you're working with people like CBS who are passionate about their property, they're so excited about the 50th anniversary. They've got so much going on next year to celebrate the party. The whole thing of, will your game come out at party time, which is 15th of July, when the new movie launches, will your game be ready? Is they asked us that almost 2 years ago. And so we've had time to plan and be ready for, this is a big one and it's going to take time. But yeah, we're progressing. We're almost there. The guys they've got a couple more months to polish it off, but it's looking good. And you've seen already the pieces of the puzzle that are exciting, including those little buttons. That's just the coolest thing.
Now, one of the things I want to talk about some of the tactical elements. You know, some of the kind of what's the experience like playing this game. But one of the things that I quite enjoy, and it's quite a simple thing, is you've got to be wary even in terms of the speed that you travel through these space lanes, because you might have a ship that's capable of a lot of warp, but if you're not careful of how you travel through a space lane, you could just end up slap bang into a black hole.
Yes.
So that there's you have to be all the time considerate of what might happen.
Travel will take two different feels. At the beginning, when you're exploring for the first time, you absolutely have to be conscious of, you don't want to flick over somewhere that's a hazard, or because you haven't got enough ships. You'll start the game with 3 ships and tech level 1 and progress. The whole, I've got fleets of Klingons, that's not how their races start. You start slow. They didn't work out. They wanted to dominate everybody day one. And because you're talking in decades, it takes time to build fleets, build ships, explore. So cautious movement at the beginning, but once you've got a board that's connected and you've got 8 or 10 planets down, I'm traveling at warp. The further up warp, the more space lanes you're skipping. So I'm at warp 5, I'm at warp 6. That's a ship moving across 6 planets, down 6 lanes, and appearing over there where I just needed the extra help. So a fleet of ships traveling around, but it goes into warp and it basically sits off the table.
Yeah.
So they're in warp and you're just keeping a track on your board. Oh, it's at warp 4, so okay, and when it comes back into warp next turn, I can have traveled 4 in any place, and so, which is how space travel was. You don't know the Klingons, they're not hiding behind this black curtain. They go, hello. Yeah. They arrive and you go, oh dear.
Ray Shields. Ray Shields.
It's where because you've got that tech of, as a Federation player, are you trying to go for faster ships and more science and more evil, or are you planning to defend yourself when either the Klingons or the Romulans come a-calling, because cloaking technology that allows you to bypass other fleets, capturing planets, which, if there's nobody there to defend it, is as simple as turning up and saying, you're mine now, and then sending fleets back. So that whole balance of, are you going to play in the aggressive style? Are you going to expand and slowly? But diplomacy is the other thing that has been factored into the game as part of trading. So rather than having a separate diplomacy phase where we're pretending to be nice and then not going to be, which is how a lot of diplomacy in games works. You just take my word for it, and then later I'm going to stab you in the back. It's all about your trading partners. And so you have a multiple set of different trade agreements. And if you want to be friends with people, you share trade agreements which have a benefit to both of you. The minute the two of you antagonize each other, you pull the trade agreement so that everything has a cost. So the diplomacy is managed by, well, who are you friends with and who are you not?
Yeah.
And, I'm more friends with Ben now, so I'm going to give him my better trade deal, and you get the crate of maggots a month instead of.
I'm so glad that the diplomacy has a mechanical aspect to it, because I think it makes it a lot more clearly defined. There's a lot less sort of rubbing up against each other in a game and going, well, why didn't you support me, kind of thing. If it's actually mechanically there, it feels right for Star Trek as well. Actually,
Yeah, it has a real narrative fit to the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
Star Trek background. So.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the world is so deep and has got so many different storylines, and now with the new movies resetting the storyline, you're not short of excuses to explore things. But from a game perspective, you want to be feeling. The Federation wants to feel like the Federation. You don't want to be running around pretending you're a Klingon, and the Klingons got to have. But you don't need to behave aggressively to win the game. And I think that's that balancing of getting the IP and game mechanics blended well to each other, so that it feels like it's Star Trek. And Klingons can be Klingons, but if you don't want to pick a fight with everybody, you can still win the game.
Yeah,
There's still, because that's how you get the Ferengi, and that's how you get the Cardassians and the Andorians in, is that you've got to have a lot of that variety, a lot of that racial choice.
Well, guys, I'm just absolutely blown away by this one. You know, it's just the scale of it is mind blowing. I cannot wait to see it. Look, John Paul, thank you very much for coming and telling us about it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Ben.
All that's left to say is, kapla!